The movie begins when we see a woman's body plunges into the water, floating momentarily before her eyes spring open in terror. Brandon jolts awake, realizing it was just a bad dream. He serves as a bodyguard for the governor's daughter Ava and has been grappling with feelings of guilt ever since he couldn't save her mother. At the airport, Ava reunites with her friends Jed and Kyle to embark on a journey together. The boys are displeased to see Brandon joining them, but Ava clarifies that her father mandated security for her to be able to go. Ava and the guys opt for sitting in the back of the plane for privacy once they board, and Ava can't help but notice the unusually low number of passengers on the flight. The plane experiences a slight shake after takeoff, which is considered normal. However, moments later, another shake occurs, and the engine starts to heat up visibly. The pilot explains that they accidentally hit some birds and reassures the passengers that everything is under control. Despite this, the plane continues to shake, and an engine catches fire. The pilot instructs everyone to fasten their seat belts, causing fear to rise among the passengers. Suddenly, a piece of the engine breaks off and strikes the side of the plane, resulting in the tragic death of a passenger. The pressure change resulting from a crack in the wall of the plane leads to chaos inside, with bags flying and passengers being thrown around, despite their efforts to hold on. Eventually, a wall blows off and creates a massive hole in the side of the plane, causing many passengers to be swept away to their deaths. Brandon attempts to hold onto a floating man, but the strong wind proves too powerful, and the man is also carried away. Despite his effort to hang on, another man could not maintain his grip on the seats as they detached from the floor. A flight attendant attempted to assist a man on the verge of falling, but ended up falling herself. With the loss of most passengers, the plane rapidly descended and crashed into the ocean, causing water to quickly flood the cabin. Brandon was injured by a piece of metal, and the impact caused seats to propel forward, resulting in the deaths of several passengers. The plane sank for a brief period before finally coming to rest on the ocean floor. The group survives because the plane is stuck at an angle, creating an airlock, with Ava, her friends, and flight attendant Danilo all still alive. Unfortunately, Kyle has a broken arm. They are alarmed by strange noises, and then Brandon emerges, bringing Rosa and her unconscious grandmother Marty to safety. Danilo performs chest compressions on Marty until she awakens. Rosa inquires about her grandfather, to which Brandon sadly informs them of his demise. The group becomes anxious, but Brandon takes charge to calm them, emphasizing the importance of staying composed and waiting for rescuers to locate them in the airlock. Despite Ava checking for reception on her phone and finding none under the sea, the group must remain hopeful. She notices a hole in the plane and suggests they swim out, but Brandon dismisses the idea due to low survival odds, and they decide to wait for help. Danilo reassures them that help should be on the way since the pilots most likely called for assistance. Brandon then emphasizes the need for backup oxygen, and Danilo discovers the emergency tanks in the back of the plane are empty when he goes to check on them. In that moment, Marty recalls that a passenger had a medical oxygen tank, prompting Brandon to volunteer to retrieve it. Before he goes, Marty asks him to also bring back her husband's hat. Brandon dives into the water and navigates through the corridor, examining the deceased passengers in their seats. He locates the husband's hat and grabs it, while also finding and retrieving the oxygen tank. As he searches for further items, he is startled when a shark suddenly attacks him through the hole in the ship. Brandon fights against the shark, struggling to get it off him. The group becomes alarmed when they notice ripples in the water, suggesting something is happening. Brandon emerges with severe wounds, instructs the others to stay back, and then hands them the oxygen tank and hat. After apologizing to Ava, Brandon is pulled back into the water and eaten by the shark. Shocked, the group retreats to the employees' area to wait as Brandon had advised. Marty, a former war nurse, offers to help with Kyle's arm by improvising a splint with magazines and bandages, causing Kyle to yell in pain as his bone is put back into place. A helicopter is currently in the vicinity searching for the downed plane, with particular urgency given that the governor's daughter is believed to be among the passengers. However, as of now, they haven't spotted anything. Meanwhile, the survivors on board hear unsettling noises as the plane shifts, hinting at the possibility of it collapsing again. Jed is becoming increasingly pessimistic, while Danilo opens the oxygen tank provided by Brandon. As they observe the water turning red and realize that sharks have entered the plane to feed on the bodies, fear mounts among the group. The sight of sharks swimming past their window, bumping into parts of the aircraft, adds to the tense situation. Despite Rosa's fears, Ava reassures her that help will arrive. Nonetheless, the helicopter is struggling to locate the crash site and is running low on fuel. The team monitors the water level and estimates they have about 3 to 4 hours before it reaches the tail of the plane. Despite this, they hear the metal creaking and see water seeping through the ceiling, casting doubt on the plane's structural integrity. Suddenly, the plane lurches downward, skidding for a few minutes and dislodging rocks before coming to a halt. Fortunately, everyone stays safe during this ordeal, but the new incline causes water to rise inside faster. Realizing the seabed is not as secure as they thought, the group decides their only option is to swim out. They discuss ways to distract the sharks, with Rosa sharing knowledge she learned about sharks disliking bubbles. Concerns arise about holding their breath for an extended period, until Kyle recalls something significant. Some passengers were carrying scuba gear with them during their travels. Danilo mentioned that the equipment was stored in the baggage hold with access through a hatch, but he believed the oxygen tanks were likely empty since they wouldn't have been permitted on the plane otherwise. Ava thought the remaining scuba equipment could still be of use, but Jed was negative about their situation. Ava decided to escape to the bathroom to hide her distress from the creaking plane. After having a breakdown in the bathroom, she returned to console Rosa about being scared. Outside, the helicopter had only 15 minutes of fuel left when they spotted floating plane parts. 2 divers quickly jumped into the water to begin the search and soon located the plane. As they approached, the survivors inside the plane signaled for help. One diver swam towards the hole, while the other went to the window to reassure the survivors that everything was under control. As the group tried to warn the diver about the shark behind him, he was unaware and continued to search around. Eventually, the shark attacked and dragged him down to his death. The survivors then spotted the diver's leg floating away, confirming the tragedy. With the helicopter running out of fuel, they had to leave, relying on the backup already on its way. As they considered taking the other diver's oxygen tank, Jed's prank of pretending to fall into the water caused a scare, but he soon revealed it was all a joke. However, when he fails to emerge in time, the shark quickly locates him and clamps down with its sharp teeth. Despite Jed's struggle against the shark's assault, the group intervenes just in time to grab his arms and pull him to safety, separating him from the shark. Sadly, they realize that Jed has lost a leg in the encounter. Marty instructs Rosa to stand behind a curtain while she tends to the wound. Marty improvises a tourniquet with some seatbelts to stem the bleeding, causing Jed to cry as he acknowledges that he won't be able to participate in future triathlons. Nonetheless, determined to escape, Ava volunteers to search for scuba gear. Upon opening the hatch, they discover that the baggage hold is flooded, but Ava bravely dives in regardless. While scanning the area with a flare, she remains unaware of something lurking behind the bags. Eventually, she locates the scuba equipment, only to be startled by an octopus as the flare suddenly goes out. The group starts to panic when they notice the darkness, but Ava returns with the diving gear just in time. They discover there are only 4 suits and masks. They hear a noise outside, thinking it's a shark hitting the plane. Jed tragically dies, and Ava desperately attempts to revive him before Marty stops her. The plane partially sinks, using the cockpit as an anchor. With water rising fast, they need to escape quickly. They plan to use the emergency oxygen canisters to fend off sharks. Kyle admits to a swimming phobia due to a childhood incident, but with encouragement from Ava and Rosa, he agrees to try. Meanwhile, Ava collects as many oxygen masks as possible to prepare for their escape. The sharks are still attacking the plane, and cracks are starting to appear on the ceiling. The group decides to change, and Marty selflessly volunteers to go without a suit, knowing that her age would slow the others down. After a tearful goodbye to Jed, the survivors head into the water, noticing the plane slowly descending again. Suddenly, the cockpit breaks, plunging into the depths, signaling the imminent fall of the plane. Marty asks Ava to go first with Rosa, and they encounter a shark blocking their path. They use an oxygen canister to frighten it away and continue swimming with Kyle and Danilo joining them. As the water rises inside the plane, Marty realizes she won't make it and stays behind, longing to be reunited with her husband. Kyle panics and swims back to release his head out of the small air pocket left. Danilo tries to return for him, but suddenly a shark comes out of the baggage hold and assaults Kyle, devouring him in seconds. Danilo, a terrified diver, swims to meet Rosa and Ava, who find the dead diver and take his tank so they can fill up their lungs. Ava and Danilo are then sent through the tank hole, but a shark blocks Rosa and Danilo from exiting the tank. Ava swims back and freezes, so the shark swims inside without seeing her. Despite the fact that her tail smacks off her mask, she is able to move her head. As Ava notices that more sharks are coming through the hole, she begins to swim toward the front. At that point, the plane starts to sink faster and the air pressure stops her from moving, but luckily Ava holds onto the seats and pushes through, surviving to leave through the front hole just before it sinks into the abyss. Ava can now begin to swim to the surface, but she quickly runs out of air and passes out. Her body naturally stops swimming, but the floaties do a good job of pushing her up and she wakes up as soon as she reaches the surface. When Ava is unable to see the others, she panics, but the helicopters show up and finally pull her out of the water. Danilo and Rosa have already been rescued, and Ava tells Rosa about her grandmother. Rosa throws her beloved plushie into the sea before falling asleep in Ava's arms, saying a final goodbye to her grandparents.